like body healers. This is where we talk to Mavericks, we talk to masters, and we hear their journeys. Today, we're talking to Acacia Lewis. I am so honored and happy to have you here. Thank you very much. And let's start by hearing your journey.
My journey really started was, with my dad on a college campus, you know. I think it was probably closer to like 2005 or 2006. And I was finally going to school with my dad. I was probably like 7 or 8 years old and sitting in on classes on calculus and algebra with my father, who was studying to be an engineer, I think, at the time, um, and studying draftsman, uh, AutoCAD type stuff. And I was on the computer, and there wasn't much available on Google. Google was kind of taboo, for kids, of course, because it had all sorts of strange things in it that I found out later. And I was researching my name, and there wasn't a lot available. You couldn't just Google things like you could now. You just kind of
Yeah.
the internet was in its youth AOL stages, and college campuses are mainly meant for using Wolfram Mathematica and different programs for learning, not really for what they're used for now, social media and things of that nature. This was still in the MySpace days, I think even pre-MySpace days. And so um, finding out that the acacia was a tree, my mom always told me it was a tree, and that was a tree in the Bible. But eventually, different things started popping up like DMT, dimethyltryptamine, um, Freemasonry. That was something in the search results that was new. And then every time something would pop up new in the search results under my name, I just had to know about it because it was not a search result that people were looking at, you know.
Right.
And so I started there, but I was a nature girl. I always went outdoors and started looking for rocks when I was a little kid, and I always had my head in the ground. And stones were like my friends. And I remember one time there was a rock shop. My parents knew I liked stones. They took me to a rock shop. I got to speak to a 100-year-old miner who had started a rock shop in Richardson, Texas, on a street that was my last name. And if you've ever lived in Richardson, you probably know the rock shop that I'm talking about. But it was a shop where you could find all sorts of museum grade jewels and gems and such. As a geologist, not metaphysical. I started off with a geology inspiration, reading different encyclopedias of rocks and minerals. I was never allowed to read Western metaphysical things in a Christian household, but I read quite a great deal of books on the topic of geology and geophysics and natural processes. And so when I went to college, I studied geophysics and astrophysics, but officially my major was geology, even though astrophysics was my research area and my degree plan, it was a dual degree plan. And so, of course, it's like a 7-year degree plan undergrad. And I only had a 4-year scholarship. So I didn't finish my entire big degree plan. I only finished until my senior year about, and then I went into the military. And so along that path, I had a deep connection with my dreams. And I noticed that certain stones I would put under my pillow at night, different things would happen in my dreams. And amethyst was the first stone that I worked with where I would see portals. And these portals would be created by my own mind, the power of my own mind. So I started harnessing that power when I was very, very, very young. And I still haven't stopped tapping into it to this day, even though not as much in the dream time. In the last night's dreams may suggest the opposite. For the grand majority of my time when I was a small child, I would dream constellations of places. And if I wanted to find someone, I would think of a place where I would normally see them. College, You're a kid in college, you think college, grocery store, park. And so I would create a simulation of a park using the knowledge that I had of what a park looked like. And then I would populate that park with average people. And of those people, it would relax my mind enough to seek out that one person that I was looking for and then speak to them. And of course, I didn't think much of it, you know, it was just childhood games, right?
Right.
And it turns out that was, something, you know. I could never prove whether or not someone else experienced anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had, as an adult, having gone back and studied these things. And I did this every single night to go into a different altered reality, an altered space. And my dreams were more vivid than any DMT trip or ayahuasca or mushroom trip I've ever had. So when people say high doses are so strong, I'm like, I really don't care. The strength doesn't matter. If you don't know the power of your mind, then it may seem strong to you. Your mind may seem strong to you, but it's not the power of the mushrooms, it's the power of your own mind. You know?
Yeah.
And that's why people who come into the mushroom arena, I really encourage them to study, because the more strong your mind is, the more powerful and profound your journeys will be, naturally speaking, because the mushroom cannot produce anything that is outside of the reaches of your neural capacity. And so it's like if you are running a computer and you have an NVIDIA graphics driver, and it's an NVIDIA graphics driver that's got like what is it, the 481 or the 490, right? And you've got a graphics processor, a GPU, with like 32 gigabytes. If you put that up on a frame rate test against something that says like has 4 gigabytes, the two aren't going to look similar. And so you have people coming to us and saying, oh, I didn't experience anything on the mushroom, but many of those people are not experienced in their lives. And so because they have not traveled, because they have not studied anything really beyond their schooling or their social lives or even their previous drug use, maybe they worked with LSD up until mushrooms. So now all they see in the mushroom trips is echoes of their LSD journeys because that's what they're thinking about.
Right.
Baba Kalindi suggested that you could go beyond thought. You could go beyond the human mental processing. And then later on, he suggested that rather than going beyond or outside of the human, we were going inside of the human, into the infraparticle, into the vastness of all creation within. And that seems more likely to me, that the more focused your mind is, that power of exploration can be released. It can be opened up, but only under circumstances in which your mind becomes pure and clear, like the consistency of a quartz crystal, but not without its imperfection. The imperfections are areas of knowledge that you've gained. And without studying those imperfections, one cannot fully integrate into their ordinary lives a sense of purpose and a sense of character. Without the imperfections, without the mistakes that we've made, without our own illusions and delusions, we would not gain wisdom. And so what makes the quartz crystal beautiful is that it has healed itself in its imperfection so that we can now see the rainbow of illumination within. And so the stones are a perfect metaphor for what happens when you go deeper into the unconscious and superconscious states of human psyche. When you are loosed from the obscurations of your own personal baggage, and you look at things from a different perspective, rather than looking at things from an obsessive, hyper stimulated, hyper compulsive mental state. And in America, many people are taught that is an acceptable mental state all the time. People are constantly obsessing over their thoughts, obsessing over their relationships, their faults, their misdeeds, and very, very rarely do you find someone who is in a state of peace. Point, is that most of our elderly live in a reality where they are constantly preyed upon by people who are trying to confuse them or sell them myriad things. So such are our youth constantly preyed upon by people who are trying to get their attention for their own purposes, to either sell them or utilize their energy for myriad means. So such are our youth and adults, and we are constantly living in this state of distraction and detraction away from what really matters, what could really bring us closer to some semblance of unity in our families. Me and my family, for the first time ever, we talked about what would have happened if we had kept our land, if we had grown organic food, if we had been stewards of the land rather than not paying the taxes or just letting the land fall away. My family are a family of farmers. We knew livestock. We owned acres of land. We had horses. We had hogs. And these are things that we lost. In the name of hyper independence and modernization and feminism. We lost these things because our women went to work. We lost these things because our families fell apart and moved away. And we also spread out. It took my grandmother getting sick unto death to bring us all into one room to speak to each other, even about basic things. And so I'm of the opinion and the firm belief that human beings deserve quality of life and quality of spiritual experience and quality of freedom to walk with God if they so choose, walk with their creator, and gain wisdom from their creator as much as they want, as often as they like. And I do believe that the psilocybin mushroom is one of the oldest tools besides trance states and prayer and meditation to do just that, which is to connect with our inner creator and to gain wisdom about our imperfections and to forgive ourselves so that we can forgive others and become better people, to correct our own mistakes. And so my life journey has been one of making lots of mistakes. And so, my grandma has a little board on the wall that says here, if you're making mistakes, then at least you're trying.
Yes.
And, I feel like spiritually, if you're afraid to make a mistake, then you don't get it. That's part of it. You want to authentically make a mistake so you can learn wisdom.
For sure. So, your journey has been vast. You've recently started doing some educational work on a level where I know you've been doing it for a while, but on a level where people can really join classes now, and you're about to embark on one that kind of marries the crystals with the healing journey. Can you tell us a little bit about that camp that's coming up I think it's in May?
Sure. Yeah, I started teaching in 2018. Divine Master Alchemy has always been a private school. Don't really advertise for it, but it's been going on since 2018. First, it was a Kambo Academy to teach Kambo practitioners about all the dieta plants, their history, their mythology, their relationship with the earth, and the songs that are associated with them. And then it expanded into my own studies, my own research in plant medicine. However, I was a student of Kalindi's before 2018. I was a student of his or friend of his. We didn't do the whole student teacher thing. We were friends. If you had something that he wanted to know about, he would talk to you. He wasn't the kind of person who you're like, oh, teacher, teach me. No, he was the kind of person you better had some kind of experience that was worth talking about, and listening to. And he would listen and he would give his feedback.
Right.
And so when I lived in the desert, I remember I had a journey around 16 dried grams. Grams don't really matter as much as people think they do. It's the ability to harness the power of your mind. And if you have no ability to harness the power of your mind, you're better off not taking mushrooms. That's how I feel. But because I've been practicing at low doses for so many years, I thought, well, I've always been 3, 5, 7, 9 since I was a teenager, since I was 16. I got introduced to mushrooms by someone who really cared about my mental health because I had suicidal thoughts at that time. And They gave me the mushroom, didn't tell me what I was even taking. And when I took the mushroom, it gave me instructions as to how to conduct myself, and I learned very quickly. It was a very quick learning curve for me to learn how to utilize that enhanced ability to explore with my mental focus. So the pairing of all those years of dream work got activated for something that had a higher purpose than just navigating to go see somebody or navigating to go talk to somebody. I was navigating to ask questions about the nature of reality. I was navigating to penetrate the mysteries inside of the stones, to penetrate the stone with my mind, to make my mind as sharp but soft as a needle, but not with matter, with insight, with the ability to see, the ability to allow what is inside to be revealed, and that is a seer trait. That's a trait of people who are seers or diviners or metaphysicians. Some people have the ability to do this, and it takes some years of staring at a wall in one spot and allowing yourself to really look inside your inner eye and see what's inside of yourself, and allow those visions to come up and then clear those things out. I feel like Bagua is a really good technique as a martial arts to train the seer's mind, because as you walk in a circle around a tree, your energy body is replenishing itself and releasing negative energy and transmuting the negative energy into positive energy as you make yourself like a capacitor and a conductor for that energy, walking around the trees. Bagua energy walking is something that's really helped me in the last couple of years as well, that I'm looking forward to eventually getting into deeper. But Baba Kalindi Iyi, Ahati Kalindi Iyi, was a grandmaster martial artist. And as a grandmaster martial artist, he didn't need anyone's permission to talk about high dose mushrooms. He had worked with high dose mushrooms for decades before I even met him. And as a friend, I just saw him as a crazy old mushroom man until I knew him better and realized, wow, this guy is very honorable. He's a chief, he's an elder, he's a mycologist, he's a great grandmaster, and he's always been a respectable person. And I admired his work, but I thought he was crazy, And so I had to test his principles, his logic and reasoning for myself, and in testing what he said on my own dose of mushrooms, and listening to what he said and analyzing if he was coming from a place of truth, if he was being 100% or if he was lying. I wanted the mushroom to show me what he saw, and that's not something that's really appropriate to do all the time. I don't recommend it. But I did it because I had no faith. I was in an atheist modality. I was in a very atheistic, skeptical, philosophical mindset coming from college and physics. And so I was like, I don't know about some aliens or predators, or I don't know about celestial generals or infraparticle ancestors. I didn't know any of that. I had to go into the mushroom experience by myself, unguarded, and contend with different beings that seemed to be preventing me from going into deeper knowledge because they were distracting me with personality characteristics that did not belong to me, but that I thought belonged to me, learned personality characteristics that I thought belonged to me, but did not belong to me. And, all of that started to drain out. All of that started to come out. That, oh, this personality of anger, this personality of fear, this personality of this, and they weren't separate personalities until I started working with the mushroom and could see that the aspects of them were unnecessary. I was identifying with emotions as self rather than identifying as self and having emotions. And a lot of people do that, a lot of people think, oh, I'm angry, you've upset me being the angry person, and their ego is what absorbs these feelings and emotions and clings to it. It's the clinging to it that is the problem. I saw somebody said a quote, we overly believe believable things and we non-believe non-believable things too much. It's two problems in society. And I can relate to that because I overly believed believable things about the ego. I non-believe non-believable things about the ego, but I was so far left and so far right that it was difficult for me to find balance before I started working with mushrooms to fine tune my ability, my ethics, my moral conduct. I started sharpening myself with the mushroom, not dulling myself. Many people would rather dull themselves and become more passive to others. I would much rather understand that who I am from my core is going the right direction effortlessly. Any resistance to that has got to go. And so the stone that he gave me in 2017 or 2016, I didn't know what to do with. I was just collecting stones because I liked them and believe in Western metaphysics. Remember, I'm a skeptic.
Right.
And so I wasn't just collecting stones for my altar and yada, yada, yada. I did not care. What happened with the transdimensional crystal that Baba Falindi gave me was that every trip that I had had up until that point was random and different. And each one had a different lesson, a different experience. And I didn't see any correlation between them because to me, I was just eating mushrooms.
Right.
It was just a mushroom. I had learned that they were sacred. I learned to respect, when I talk about them, not to make up stuff, basically. But in 2016 and 2017, I was still forming that respect.
Right.
And those foundation of forming that respect came from having brutal experiences many times. And so I was like, oh, I don't know what to expect, but I know I need to learn, and so I wanted to teach me because I feel very ignorant. I feel like I've been miseducated about what a human being is and what its responsibilities are. Like I've been miseducated about being a woman is and what her responsibilities are, what a daughter is, what a child is. And I had to re-educate myself about myself because the education that I had been paying attention to was societally and socially normalized, but it was fluff. It wasn't based in anything other than maybe this country and its desires.
Right.
And so going back to my roots was happening during that time. And when I received the stone, I tried banging it against my forehead, thinking, oh, I guess it's going to open my so-called third eye. I was just ridiculous. Bang, 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 like, ow, that hurts. This thing's stupid. It's not going to do anything. It's just a rock. Look at me getting scammed. I'm so stupid. Buying this witchy rock from some strange man on the internet, I'm probably going to go to hell for this, Christian programming still looping in my head, Satan's tool or whatever, like I was born Pentecostal. And so underneath the atheism was a layer of Pentecostalism. And underneath the Pentecostalism was a layer of Hinduism, but poorly understood Hinduism. The most appropriated, Western appropriated yoga type Hinduism you could possibly imagine, a starving child in an ashram type Hinduism, until I decided to go and stay in an ashram for some years. And that was like 2018, 2019. I was in an ashram and initiated, but that was after this period. And so when he gave me the stone, my first thought was, he says I gotta take 15 grams. I'm gonna see how low of a dose I can take. I'm not gonna take no 15 grams. He won't know, and so I would take 8 grams, nothing would happen. I would take 10 grams, nothing would happen. And finally I did 16 grams and I thought, well, what's gonna happen now? And I sat there in the dark, but because I couldn't see the crystal, when the wormhole opened up and I ended up tumbling through the multiverse out into what seemed to be the body of Kalindi looking at me and communicating to me through words, and then those words entering my eyes and then going back into my consciousness. I was like, I think I tumbled into you in the multiverse. I think I fell through a wormhole. You'd start laughing. And the next thing that happened was I saw a Hindu deity, but I didn't know it was a Hindu deity because, of course, I was miseducated. So I saw a lion-faced man, and he was sitting next to me. He had a bunch of arms. He had a giant lion's face, and he merged into me. And when he merged into me, I felt solid. I felt confident. I felt strong again. And this would be like to Hindu people, this is Lord Narasimha. and the great destroyer, the great terrifier, Lord Narasimha. And I didn't know who that was. Narasimha, what a? Like, I had no concept of what a Narasimha was. And so I never even seen his pictures before. And so for me to see that in my trip, I was like, oh, so that's what this is, like a personality of the Most High, looking at it from a Christian point of view. Okay, so this is a personality of God that entered my body and I felt healed. I felt strong again. Okay. All right. And so that was that trip. And I didn't think much of it. I forgot, well, the stone's still not working. I wrote something to say, I don't think it's working. You know, I think this is silly. And then the next thing he posted was the Yiming Zoo. So I was even more critical. I was like, I'm not going to buy a glow in the dark stone. I'm sorry, but you're probably trying to poison people. That thing looks like it may be radioactive. You know, I'm just very critical. You know, and the worst karma is that now today in 2024, I've got to be the person to talk to all the people who think a lot like me and try to explain this stuff rationally that's not rationally explainable by scientific terms or spiritual terms, that it's a thing. You know, you reap what you sow.
Yes.
I sowed seeds of doubt and now I have so many doubters. And I don't want to make them believers because I believe that they can be as skeptical as they want to be. I think they should have the freedom to be as skeptical as they want to be, but they've got to try it. The problem is you have people saying that they did the dose just like I thought. I didn't say I did the dose. No, you didn't do the dose. Because when you do the dose and you sit with the stone, something happens that is unbelievable, that is impossible, that is magical, and it will change you. God will change you, not the stone. The spirit of divine energy or source, whatever you want to call it, will be amplified with assistance from the stone. Stone's just an instrument for this infinite force of knowledge to come through and enter the human body and interface with it. We're seeing a fraction, a part and parcel of this intelligence flow down enough inside of the stone. You know, the best evidence I have in science for this kind of thing is that when you look at a cat's eye crystal or cat's eye marble type stone, it slows down the speed of light, which is 200,000 plus miles an hour, to 65 miles an hour so that you can see the chatoyancy, so that you can see the cat's eye illusion. That's it, slowing down the speed of light. So if a crystal can slow down the speed of light, then maybe it can stabilize the vibration of divine energy so we can actually observe and communicate with it and receive divine instruction from it, similar to Umim and Thummim in the Bible, which are prophetic stones of the priests of Aaron. And they would use these prophetic stones to determine the guilt or innocence of an individual. And when I held the stone in dim light at a higher dose, after my first breakthrough, then I took 5 grams and thought, well, I'm not going to try to activate the crystal. But you know, after taking it 5 grams, not trying to activate it, it activates, right? Because you can't want to make it happen on your time. It has to happen on God's time. It has to happen in divine time. You know, and then when it happened, I didn't know what to do with myself because I thought, oh, well, now I guess I can go anywhere I want and do whatever I want. And that's not the case either. You know, you have to pass tests. You know, it asks you what the password is, and because you don't study any sort of spiritual scripts or any sort of religious anything, you don't know what to tell it. Like, it's a stone. Why is it asking you what a password is? Who put a lock on it? It's a stone. You know, and that's what I was thinking because it happened in my trip. I felt the spirit of divine energy come into me and say, well, what is the password? I said, well, I don't know. It's because you're distracted. And I kept going between I don't know and I'm distracted to I don't know and I'm distracted. And oh, there's the anger and frustration. And seeing the anger and frustration being like, what are you doing here? And it leaving. And then seeing the sadness and upset and saying, what are you doing here? And it leaving. And seeing the trickster, the jokester in me and say, why are you laughing? What are you doing here? We have a task to do. Why are you laughing? And then finally realizing, oh, this is what was distracting me, was all these emotional states that I had made into something I had allowed to control me on such a visceral level. And once they left, it was just me and the stone. And so I asked the stone again, well, what do you mean by password? I said, well, think really hard what password you set. I thought, well, what password would I set to access infinite knowledge? And I just thought of it very simply. I said, oh, forgive everyone and you'll be forgiven. Boom. Everything opened up.
Wow. Wow.
That simple. Forgive everyone and you'll be forgiven. Because then you won't misuse the knowledge that you receive. Because then you won't utilize it to hunt people down, to harm people, to try and use it for benefit, for money, for whatever, for a relationship, try to put somebody in a bad situation. You're going to use it for the right reasons. And so as I got to know the stone, it started teaching me what the right reasons were to access this knowledge, and that there were levels of access that I could not obtain until I worked on certain parts of myself, my shadow self, so that when I received wisdom, I wouldn't use the wisdom in vain, and I wouldn't disrespect God in my utilization of it. I would honor him in it. And some people say, well, God doesn't exist. I said, well, I don't know what else to call it at this point. Because even the stone connects you with its power. If the stones are teaching you its law, and its law has existed beyond time and was never created, but it's a law that governs all things, then I call that God. I call the natural law God, if that's what it is. If you want to call it Allah, fine. If you want to call it source, fine. If you want to call it improparticle intelligence, fine. But to me, I call it God. To me, it's beyond what I even consider the Buddha. The Buddha, for me, is something that I take refuge in, that is in the form of that same God.
Okay.
But the Buddha is not that. The Buddha is created in my mind. All Tibetan deities are self-generated. Hindu deities, on the other hand, are the personifications of divinity and divine law. And so for me, I have a little easier time studying Hinduism than I do even Buddhism, because for me, I'm a poor student. And so they tell me what the Buddha is supposed to do and what qualities he has, and I don't read them all the way. And so I'm like, And then they tell me, oh, Shiva is the supreme personality of the proton molecule embodied in divinity on the cell, and inside infinity exists or zero exists. A blank point in space exists. And so it's always creating and destroying. And I'm like, oh, physics. Chase. That looks safe, falls down a wormhole. Like I've actually chased Shiva down in the multiverse and gotten all my bones broken. Apparently he's a god of beautification. That's what somebody said. Oh yeah, worship Shiva, worship Shiva. Your skin will be more beautiful. I'm like, I wasn't trying to do that. He's like, oh well, he formed Dirge's face. I was like, I wasn't trying to do any of that, but sure enough, I was sitting there feeling like all my bones are broken, trying to produce the sound, the utterance of divine love. And I was like, oh, okay. So this helped me to be able to do the vibration of Om in the right frequency, because not everyone says Om, Om, Om. It's like your whole body vibrates if you get deep enough with it. It's like you hear those Gayoto monks just going, your hair. Like I used to monks, like I love them. No disrespect meant at all, but they just their voices are so deep and so baritone because they're inside of the vibrational action of communing with the creator. They're when you say Om, the activity of Om is to shoot one's soul into the body of the Brahman, or into the body of the Brahmana, the great one, the great creator, and to become one with that. It's not just a sound, it's a gate, and it's also liberation and refuge and bliss body of Dharmakaya of the Buddha. All of these different things is in that one tone. And so the transdimensional stones give you access to be able to go down layers multiversally, to study things multidimensionally that are quantumly entangled with people, places, things that we see in this reality, but are so much, or filled, the knowledge that it took to create them could fill up universes. But that is the information that's inside the infraparticle spirit of divine consciousness. And in order to observe that, we must have a focused mind. We must have a stable mind. And so the stones, specifically those quartz stones that Kalindi had, yeah, those are the ones that I utilize for this work. I don't utilize any other stones. Even the Yiming Zhu, I have my own hangups about the Yiming Zhu because of the people who work with the Yiming Zhu. Not because of the Yiming Zhu, but because of how I've been treated.
Right.
And I never had that happen with the transdimensional crystals. I like the Yiming Zhu, and I won't say anything negative about the Yiming Zhu, but I will say that it's a level of responsibility even higher, because you're carrying something on your body that's constantly picking up your thought form, that's constantly picking up your vibration, has the ability to magnetize those vibrations to you. So wearing them when you are not in a good state is difficult. It's difficult in your reality. You may not know why all this negativity is coming to you. You might not know because it's like a wormhole around your neck of quantumly entangled information. And that's a level of responsibility. Like when I told Kalindi I wore mine all the time, he just looked at me like I was half crazy. And I didn't take that seriously. I just thought he thought genuinely I was half crazy. But no, later on I now analyzed. Well, he looked at me when I said that. So he thought what I said was half crazy. He didn't think I was half crazy, because we went on carrying on like it was just fine after that. Telling him was half crazy that I was carrying the Yiming Zhu all the time. And so I don't recommend wearing it unless you are coming out from an experience or at the peak of an experience where you and the creator are in such communion that it's just amplifying what the creator wants to give to you. It's just amplifying your blessings. It's amplifying your aspirations. It's amplifying your wishes that they be done in a way that honors yourself and others. Because if it's not, it's all bad from there. And there are people who have learned those lessons and lost everything they have working with Yiming Zhu, thinking that they were accruing power. The Yiming Zhu is but a mite on the hair of the eyebrow of the Buddha. But many people think they're getting the Buddha.
Right. Change the subject a little bit. Just going back to the course I did with you and talking about, we started off that it was supposed to be talking about mushrooms in Africa, and we got an amazing history lesson on the roots of so many different divine herbs and their qualities in Africa, which is something that especially listeners here in the Caribbean don't have any connection to. I mean, just for me hearing about frankincense and the true origins of real frankincense took me a while to even comprehend it. Then you went through showing us where to find all these things and realizing that the layers of what we look at in the internet are so surface. It took me to a whole different place. So just tell us a little bit about that course as well.
Well, I was at first, talking about mushrooms in Africa is a precarious playground because African mushroom use is still secret on many levels. And so there's not a whole lot that someone who isn't taking mushrooms in Africa really knows. Unless you're on the ground taking mushrooms in Africa, like my teacher was, Kalindi, he would teach about the origins of the mushroom, but he still would never really talk about the ritual use. We even went into Suleiman's journey and the ritual use with a conocybe species that grows in Ivory Coast. Remember that?
Yeah.
Now, I talked about the spice trade and frankincense and myrrh mainly because as a psychedelic, there was no more valuable than frankincense at a certain period of time as far as something that you could eat, chew, cook with, wash with, make into perfumery, etc. That was an essential part of African life. Having honey, having frankincense, having cassava, having millet, having sorghum, etc., were essential to life in many parts of Africa, as well as working with the Acacia nilotica tree. And so I went through the class hoping that the interest in mushrooms will also lead to an interest in the ethnobotany, because part of what I have an issue with is that many people think that because the mushroom has psychedelic properties, it's the most powerful for healing. And that's not true. The mushroom is a bridge between you and divine healing, but giving offerings and giving thanks is one of the original ways of asking for healing. And we get out of that practice of utilizing the technology to actually honor divinity within ourselves and our ancestors, etc. And to honor oneself can do a lot more for healing oneself than it can for us to become egoically charged. And I see a lot of times the mushroom causes us to become more egoically charged, and we think we are honoring ourselves by seeing ourselves, but we're not seeing ourselves. We're seeing a part of divine character in ourselves. And that's a very small part, of the sum of the whole that we are inside of, And so for me personally, the frankincense is really powerful because it really helped me with my anxiety. And most of the people who work with the mushroom, they can work with the mushroom 30 years and still haven't mastered conquering their anxiety. And they also haven't dealt with the chronic health concerns. And so the frankincense was like a divination tool in many ways, because when I would burn the frankincense, my mind would be clear and relaxed. And so pairing that with entheogens seemed essential. The whole energy of the entire ceremony would be void if we did not do some sort of clearing. We have bacteria on our bodies. We have bacteria coming out of our mouths. We're constantly breathing and inhaling the same air. There's formaldehyde in our homes. If you don't have plants around and you live in a place like I'm living right now in my grandma's house, there's a lot of pollutants and lead, asbestos, whatever. If you burn the frankincense, you pull a lot of that mess out of the air. It cleans a lot of the bacteria in the air. And that bacteria is a spirit in many traditions. And so as far as removing negative spirits that could harm you, harm your body, harm your mind, frankincense is a quintessential tool because it helps to address the spiritual nature of disease and sickness. Whereas the mushroom is a conduit to let you see what's going on. You might be able to see it all day, but if you cannot cleanse yourself from it, then you end up overwhelmed with negativity. And I see a lot of people suffering from this in the mushroom community. So they're like, oh, I had someone very upset with me because she was talking about aliens and how white people were an alien race, maybe come to take over. And because I didn't agree with her, I've been blacklisted from a lot of Black conferences about psychedelics, because I don't agree with the fact that we should see the government and police officers as demonic force in this world. I've been blacklisted in many cases. And so, for me, it's like, if these people do not forgive and do not let go, then they're just, the spirit of sickness is in their bodies and in their minds. And they will try to convince others to participate in their sickness. And when they do not, that person becomes ostracized, because the sickness is inside of their minds. It's not in the external world. It's inside. You have to kill the inner enemy. There is no external enemy. There is one inside of us, though, that tells us that people outside, compassionate, sentient beings, deserve to suffer or deserve to be killed because of whatever they have done. That inner judge is not real. That is our ego, And so I remain firm in saying, like, I will cooperate with all sorts of walks of life. I don't care if you're a police. My mom was a police officer. I don't care if you're military. I don't care if you're a lawyer. I don't care if you're someone who arrests Black people. I don't care, because I see that you are a child of the Most High. And in all other mushroom traditions, including Aztec tradition, Buddhist tradition, many other traditions that honor and revere the mushroom, we come from a place of seeing ourselves and others, seeing the divine light within me reflected in you. In Lakesh Alakin, we are connected, and I treat my brother as I treat myself, and I put others before myself. And having a narrative that is, the white police officer over there is going to rape me because he is a white police officer, it doesn't serve me. So that kind of generational sickness and trauma in my mind does not serve me. And even my grandmother, who experienced in the 1960s people being hunted and killed and attacked with bullwhips, so many Black people being killed for speaking up for their rights, etc. Even she is more compassionate than people I've met in the psychedelic community many times, who are very enraged and very almost even more racist than the people who they claim traumatize them. And so to eliminate the walls of superficiality and the division that we have in our hearts because of our judgment towards others and our own internal trauma, I feel like that's the great work, and I feel like when more people take the mushroom with that intention and utilize African herbs that were divine to unify us, like canna, like frankincense, like even the goruntula to heal our wombs, to heal our minds, the nep seed, we start reclaiming our birthright, which is kindness towards others, and an ethical and moral conduct befitting of being African in the first place. What it means to be African is not to wear African clothing. What it means to be African is to be a son or daughter of a chief, to be a child of the Most High, and to have the birth and the beauty of Africa as our birthright. If you do not understand that the beauty of Africa is in her strength and in her kindness, you can treat that as a naivety all you want to, but I feel like everything has happened for a reason. Many descendants of Africa have found themselves in the United States. I mean, someone made a post saying, oh, Black people were reduced to a color, and that's why you have so much suffering in Black people, is because the word Black. And I say that's not true at all. I think there's a divine plan that's been orchestrated to help us to spread to other places. Do you know how many people are in third world countries in Africa who wish they had the chance that the descendants of the ones who came here now have because of years of suffering? I am proud of my ancestors for being here, whether they came here by force or by their own will. Because we make lemonade out of lemons all the time. And this is not new. Slavery is not new. War is not new. But that does not mean that we are forever oppressed because of it. It means that we can evolve, adapt, grow. That's our strength. That's our power. And I choose to focus on the blessings that have come from this rather than the curses.
Well done. Well said. Well said. Love it. Love it. Love it. You have given me some beautiful time here. I enjoyed every minute of it. I don't want to take up much more because I know that you're busy, but I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for making time for me to be here.